In 1995, New York City was a place where dreams were made. The streets were busy with people rushing to work, and tall glass buildings sparkled in the sunlight. These buildings were so tall they looked like they were touching the sky. On the 42nd floor of one of these buildings sat a man named Ethan Carter. Ethan was rich and powerful. He wore fancy suits, had an office with a view of the whole city, and everyone respected or feared him. He was like a king in his own little world. Ethan worked very hard to get where he was. He believed everything in his life was perfect because he controlled it all. Ethan didn't care much about other people's feelings. To him, his life was like a well-run machine, and he didn't want anything to mess it up. One day, Ethan met a young woman named Claire Bennett. Claire worked in his office as a secretary. Her job was to help Ethan with his schedule, answer his calls, and organize papers. She was very good at her job. Claire was smart, calm, and confident. She was in her mid-20s, fresh out of college, with beautiful, deep brown skin that shone like polished wood. At first, Ethan only noticed how professional Claire was. She was quiet and focused, always polite, and never made mistakes. But as time went on, he started noticing more about her. He liked the way she carried herself and how she always stood tall and spoke clearly. Soon, Ethan found himself watching her during meetings or looking forward to bumping into her in the hallways. Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Claire. She was different from other women he had met. Many women liked Ethan because he was rich and powerful, but Claire wasn't like that. She didn't treat him like a big deal. She treated him like a regular person, and Ethan liked that. One evening, Ethan and Claire stayed late at the office to finish some work. It was quiet, and they were the only ones there. As they worked, Ethan found himself talking to Claire more than usual. He told her about his childhood, how he had worked hard to become successful, and how much pressure he felt to stay at the top. Claire listened carefully. She was kind and understanding, and Ethan felt safe talking to her. Soon, Ethan and Claire started spending more time together. They would stay late at the office, talking and laughing. Ethan realized he was falling for her. Claire also liked Ethan. She saw a softer, kinder side of him that most people didn't get to see. She thought maybe deep down, Ethan was a good man who was just afraid to show it. But Ethan was scared. He didn't want anything to ruin his perfect life. He didn't want people to know about his feelings for Claire because he thought it would cause problems at work. Ethan convinced himself that their relationship could only be a secret, something that wouldn't last forever. One evening, Claire came to Ethan's office. She looked nervous. Her hands were shaking as she said, "Ethan, I need to tell you something. I'm pregnant." Ethan was shocked. He didn't say anything for a long time. His mind was racing. He thought about how this news could ruin his reputation. What would people think? What would happen to his career? Ethan didn't know what to do. Claire said softly, "I don't need anything from you. I just thought you should know." The next day, Ethan called Claire into his office. He looked at her with cold, distant eyes. His voice was serious as he said, "I'm sorry, Claire, but this can't continue. I'm letting you go." Claire felt like her heart was breaking, but she didn't cry in front of him. She stood tall, took the small severance check he offered, and walked out of the office. As she left, a single tear rolled down her cheek. Claire promised herself she would never let Ethan hurt her again. Years passed, and Ethan's life changed. He became even richer and more powerful. He married twice, but both marriages ended in divorce. He didn't have any children, and he often felt lonely. Ethan still worked in his big office on the 42nd floor, but now it felt empty. He had everything he had ever wanted: money, power, and success, but none of it made him happy. Sometimes, Ethan thought about Claire and wondered what had happened to her. Did she have the baby? Was she okay? But Ethan quickly pushed those thoughts away. He didn't like thinking about the past. One day, Ethan's assistant brought him an envelope. It looked fancy, with neat handwriting on the front. Ethan opened it and read the letter inside. Dear Mr. Sinclair, you are invited to a special charity gala hosted by the Bennett Foundation. The foundation supports single mothers and families in need. We would be honored to have you join us. Sincerely, A. Bennett. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. A. Bennett. Could it be Claire? He hadn't heard her name in over 20 years. Ethan felt nervous and curious. He wondered why Claire was inviting him. On the night of the gala, Ethan dressed in a black tuxedo and rode in his fancy car to the event. The gala was held in a grand ballroom with sparkling chandeliers, soft music, and people in elegant dresses and suits. Ethan walked in and saw waiters carrying trays of champagne and guests chatting in small groups. As he moved through the crowd, he heard people talking about Claire. They said she was an amazing woman who had helped so many people through her foundation. Ethan felt a mix of pride and guilt. Claire had become someone important, and he had been the one to let her go. Suddenly, the lights dimmed, and everyone became quiet. A spotlight shone on the stage at the front of the room, and a woman walked up to the microphone. Ethan's heart raced as he saw her. It was Claire. She looked confident and elegant, her smile lighting up the room. Good evening, everyone, Claire said. Thank you for being here tonight. Your support means the world to us. The Bennett Foundation started as a small dream to help single mothers like me, and now, thanks to all of you, it has grown into something bigger than I ever imagined. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Single mothers like me. Did that mean she had raised their child alone? As Claire continued her speech, a young woman stepped onto the stage beside her. She looked about 24 years old, with skin as rich and deep as Claire's and Ethan's sharp eyes. Ethan felt a jolt of recognition. This was his daughter. Claire introduced the young woman to the crowd. This is my daughter, Grace. She has been my greatest inspiration and my biggest supporter. Together, we've worked to make the Bennett Foundation what it is today. Ethan stood frozen, staring at them. Grace smiled at the crowd, her confidence shining through. She had Claire's warmth and Ethan's determination. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt completely powerless. He had spent years building his empire, but now, standing in that ballroom, he realized he had missed out on something far more important, being a father. As the crowd clapped and cheered for Claire and Grace, Ethan felt tears sting his eyes. He had always believed he was in control of his life, but now he saw how much he had lost by trying to keep everything perfect. When the event ended, Ethan didn't know what to do. Should he approach Claire and Grace? Should he apologize? As he stood there unsure, Claire looked up and met his eyes. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the weight of the past hanging between them. Ethan stood still, his heart beating fast. In front of him was Claire Bennett. She looked older now, but her beauty had only grown. Her soft hair framed her face, and her fancy dress made her look even more elegant. When her eyes met his for a moment, he saw that she recognized him. Claire began speaking to the people at the event. Her voice was strong and clear. She talked about the Bennett Foundation, which helped single moms and families who didn't have much. She shared stories about their struggles and how they overcame them. Her words were filled with kindness and strength, and they made Ethan feel something deep inside. As he listened, Ethan felt guilty. This was the same woman he had left many years ago. He had walked away from her without thinking twice, leaving her to face the world alone. And now, here she was, a strong and powerful woman who had done so much good. When she finished her speech, everyone clapped loudly, but Ethan barely noticed. He was too focused on Claire and the memories of their past. Claire stepped down from the stage and moved through the crowd. Ethan's heart raced as he watched her. He felt pulled toward her, but also scared. Memories of the time they had spent together flashed through his mind, along with the last time he saw her, the hurt in her eyes when he left. But the Claire standing here today was different from the young woman he once knew. As if she could feel his gaze, Claire looked right at him. Her eyes were cold, with no sign of affection. Summoning his courage, Ethan walked toward her, weaving through the crowd until he stood face to face with her. "Mr. Sinclair." Claire greeted him with a small smile that felt distant, like they were just two strangers meeting for the first time. "Claire," Ethan replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Up close, he noticed the fine lines on her face, signs of a life that hadn't been easy, but had made her stronger. "I'm glad you accepted the invitation," she said. Her tone was polite but sharp, like a blade hidden in a soft cloth. "It's been a long time." "Yes, it has," Ethan said, his discomfort growing. "I hadn't expected... Well, I didn't know you'd become so..." He fumbled for words. "Successful?" Claire said, raising an eyebrow. "Resilient, independent?" "Yes, all of that," he admitted, feeling small under her gaze. A silence grew between them. Ethan looked around the room, feeling out of place. He had come here as a confident and powerful man, but in front of Claire he felt vulnerable. Then Claire looked past him, her expression softening just a little. "There's someone I'd like you to meet," she said, her voice quieter now. Before Ethan could respond, a young woman stepped forward from the crowd. The woman was tall, with glowing brown skin and curly hair that fell around her shoulders. Her eyes were sharp and confident, with a spark that reminded Ethan of Claire. But as he looked closer, he saw something else, something of himself in her face. "This is Lily," Claire said, her voice steady. "Your daughter." Ethan felt like the world had stopped. "Your daughter." The words echoed in his mind. He stared at Lily, seeing the proud way she stood and the fire in her eyes. She was so much like her mother, but also undeniably a part of him. "Lily," he whispered, his voice shaky. I didn't know." Lily's expression turned cold. "Of course you didn't," she said sharply. "You didn't care enough to find out." Ethan's chest ached as he looked at her. He wanted to say something, to explain, but no words came. He was a man used to being in charge, but now in front of his daughter, he was speechless. "You left us," Claire said quietly. "You made your choice. I made mine." Her calm voice carried the weight of everything she had been through. She had raised Lily on her own, giving her all the love and care that Ethan had never been there to offer. "You must have had such a hard time," Ethan said, his voice weak. He instantly regretted it. The words felt empty and meaningless. Claire's eyebrow rose, and she said nothing. Her silence spoke louder than anything else. She didn't want his pity. She didn't need it. She had survived without him, and thrived. Lily stepped forward, her gaze like a knife. "Do you know what it's like to grow up without a father?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but her words cut deep. "To see your mom working 3 jobs just to keep us going? To feel like you were a mistake that someone tried to erase?" Ethan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He wanted to tell her she wasn't a mistake, that he was sorry, but no words felt right. "You don't get to explain," Lily continued, her voice trembling with emotion. "You don't get to make this about you. I'm here now, and that's all you need to know. I'm your daughter, but you're nothing more than a stranger to me." Ethan felt like the room was closing in on him. The weight of his choices pressed down on his shoulders. Claire placed a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder, and Ethan saw the unbreakable bond between them. It was a bond he could never be part of. For a moment, Ethan saw sadness in Lily's eyes. It wasn't just anger. It was hurt. She looked at him like she was mourning the father she had never known. But then her expression hardened again, and the sadness was gone. "Enjoy the event," Lily said curtly before turning away. Claire gave him one last look. "I wanted you to see what you lost," she said softly. "Lily needed closure, and she deserved to know the truth about you." With that, she turned and walked away, her arm around Lily. Ethan stood frozen, watching as they disappeared into the crowd. He had thought his success and wealth made him powerful, but now he felt empty. As time passed, Ethan barely noticed the music and chatter around him. All he could think about was Claire and Lily. He saw them standing together in a quiet corner of the room. Despite the fear rising inside him, he decided to approach them. He needed to say something, even if it was just, "I'm sorry." Taking a deep breath, Ethan began to walk toward them. When he arrived, Lily looked at him with a sad face, like she knew he would come, but was already ready to hear something bad. "Lily?" "Claire, I don't even know where to start," Ethan said, his voice heavy with regret and sadness. "I came here tonight not knowing what to expect. I never thought, I never imagined." "You never imagined?" Lily interrupted him, her voice strong but calm. Her words hurt Ethan, but he didn't back down. "Lily, please," he said. "I know I can't fix what I did, but if there's anything I can do now, I want to try." Lily's eyes burned with anger as she cut him off. "What exactly do you think you can do, Ethan? Show up at a few events, sign a few checks? Do you think that will make all the years you were gone disappear?" She didn't wait for him to answer. "I grew up without a dad. My mom had to be both my parents. She worked so hard every day while you were out living your life." Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but Lily didn't let him. Her voice grew stronger, every word showing the pain she'd carried for years. "Do you really think you can just show up now, say sorry, and pretend to be part of my life? You're nothing but a ghost, Ethan. I am who I am because of her." Lily pointed to her mom, Claire. Her words hit Ethan like a heavy weight. He looked at Lily and saw the pain in her eyes. He looked at Claire, who was standing quietly, but her eyes were full of anger too. "You left us with nothing, Ethan," Claire said, stepping forward. Her voice was calm but firm. "Do you even know what that was like? No help, no money, no safety. I had to start all over, raising a child all by myself. I was so tired, I could barely think some nights. I worked as a waitress, a store clerk, and took every extra job I could just to keep us going. And Lily? She didn't get to have a proper childhood. She was always worried because I was all she had." Claire paused, her voice shaking a little. "I remember her coming home late, her hands rough from work, her face tired, but she always smiled at me," Lily said softly. "Even as a kid, I knew I had to be strong. If I fell apart, it would just make things harder for her." Ethan's heart ached as he listened. He could see how much they had suffered because of him. No apology or gift could fix that. Lily kept talking, her voice stronger now. "But we survived," she said, standing tall. "More than that, we thrived. I went to college with scholarships, worked 2 jobs, and graduated at the top of my class. I went to law school, and now I fight for people who are ignored, single moms, kids without dads, people left behind. I know what it's like to feel invisible, and I work to make sure others don't." Ethan stood there silently, his head bowed. He tried to explain. "I was afraid. I thought—" "You thought what?" Claire interrupted, her voice cold. "You thought you could leave and never think about us again? That we would just disappear?" Ethan looked at the floor. "I was selfish. I made a terrible mistake, and I've regretted it ever since." "Regret doesn't change what happened," Lily said. "We had to live with the pain every single day. You can't rewrite the past just because you feel bad now." Ethan wanted to say he understood, but he didn't. He couldn't. He looked at them both and realized he was an outsider. The life they had built was strong and beautiful, but he was not part of it. "I kept going because of Lily," Claire said quietly, her voice full of pride and love. "She was my strength. Together we created a good life. She's my daughter in every way that matters. And you're just a memory." Ethan's heart sank. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," he whispered. "But if there's anything—" "There's nothing," Lily said, her voice firm. "We don't need anything from you. We never did. My mom raised me to be strong, to believe in myself, and to know my worth. I don't need a dad who only shows up when it's easy for him." Ethan left, feeling hopeless. Back in his fancy home, he looked around at his expensive things and felt empty. His big, important life felt meaningless now. He thought about Lily's words and how much he had missed. The days blurred together as he sat with his regret. questioning all his choices. One day, Ethan decided he had to do something. He couldn't fix the past, but maybe he could help now. He called Claire's office and left a message, offering to donate to her foundation or help in any way he could. To his surprise, Claire agreed to meet him at a small cafe. When Ethan arrived, his heart raced. He wanted to apologize, to show he was serious about making things better. Claire arrived looking calm but distant. She sat down, her face serious. "Ethan," she said. "You wanted to meet?" "Yes," he said, leaning forward. "Claire, I want to say," she held up her hand to stop him. "Before you start, let me be clear. I'm not here to forgive you or hear excuses. I'm here to make sure we understand each other." Ethan nodded nervously. "Claire, I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to help. I can donate to your foundation or support your work. I just want to make things better." Claire's gaze was cold. "You don't understand. You lost the right to be part of this. Lily and I don't need your money or your help. We built our lives without you, and we'll keep going without you." Ethan realized that no matter what he did, he could never truly be part of their lives again. They didn't need him, and they never had. Ethan stood nervously in the cafe, facing Claire, the woman he had once loved but had abandoned many years ago. Claire's words were sharp and full of pain. "We built a life without you," she said, her voice calm but filled with emotion. "Every hard time we went through, every challenge we beat, we did it alone. You had nothing to do with it." Her words were like a heavy door shutting in Ethan's face. He had hoped his money could fix things, that it could bring him back into their lives. But Claire's tone told him he was wrong. "This isn't about charity," she continued, her voice getting stronger. "Your money can't buy forgiveness. It can't erase the nights I worked so hard I could barely stand. It can't replace the father Lily never had because you left us. And now, you think you can just come back because you feel bad? That's not how it works." Ethan wanted to argue, to explain that he was a different man now, but he saw no point. Claire didn't believe he had changed. She still saw the man who had walked away without looking back. As he was about to respond, the door opened and Lily walked in. Ethan's heart started pounding. He didn't expect to see her. She walked up to their table, looking angry. First, she looked at her mom, then at him. "What are you doing here?" Lily asked coldly. "Did you really think you could just throw money at us and make everything okay?" Ethan slumped in his chair. "Lily, I know I can't fix the past, but I want to try. I want to be here for you now." Lily shook her head, her face hard with years of hurt. "Be here now? You think that's enough? Where were you when I needed a dad? When I was a little girl wondering why I wasn't good enough for you to stay?" Her words hit him like a punch in the stomach. He felt like he couldn't breathe. Everything she said was true. "I didn't know what to do," he whispered, barely able to speak. "I was scared." Lily's eyes narrowed. "Scared? You didn't want the trouble of being a dad. You didn't want to deal with us, and now you think we should believe you've changed?" Ethan had no answer. He could see how strong Lily had become, stronger without him. He felt like a failure. Claire gently put her hand on Lily's shoulder and looked at Ethan. "It's too late," she said softly but firmly. "We moved on. We don't need you." Lily nodded. "If you really want to help, find someone who actually needs it. But we're done here." Ethan watched as Claire and Lily left the cafe together. He felt hollow, like there was a hole in his chest. They didn't need him. They had grown strong and happy without him. As they disappeared, Ethan realized he might never see them again. After that day, Ethan felt empty. For the first time in his life, he couldn't use his money or power to fix things. But Ethan was not the kind of man who gave up easily. He decided he would do whatever it took to prove he had changed. He started by learning about Lily's life. She was now an advocate, working to help single moms and families who struggled like hers had. Ethan went to one of her events. It was in a community center where the walls were covered with posters showing families in need and messages about justice and fairness. Ethan felt out of place. His fancy suit and shiny shoes stood out in the crowd of people wearing casual clothes. He saw people glancing at him with suspicion. Still, he stayed and looked for Lily. At the front of the room, he saw her speaking to the crowd. Her voice was full of strength and passion as she talked about helping families. She was confident, her words inspiring everyone around her. Ethan was amazed. When the event ended, he approached her carefully. "Lily," he said quietly. She turned to him, her face cold. "What are you doing here?" "I came to support you," he said. "I want to learn about what you do and help however I can." Lily gave him a bitter smile. "So now you want to be part of my life? Showing up to one event doesn't change anything. You're 24 years too late, Ethan." Ethan felt a lump in his throat but tried to stay calm. "I know I can't undo the past, but I'm here now. I want to help." "This isn't about you," Lily said firmly. She looked around, noticing people staring, and sighed. "If you want to help, donate anonymously. Don't come here expecting some big moment of forgiveness. That's not what this is." Then, without waiting for a reply, Lily walked away, blending into the crowd. Ethan stood there, realizing he had only made things worse. Ethan didn't stop trying. He started donating to the causes Lily cared about. He sent big checks to her foundation, hoping it would show her he was serious. But every time he sent money, Lily's response was short and formal. She called him Mr. Sinclair, making it clear she still saw him as a stranger. Her messages were polite but cold. Ethan began to understand that money couldn't fix what he had broken. It couldn't replace the years he had missed or heal the pain he had caused. Instead, Ethan started following Lily's work from a distance. He read about her in the news, watched her interviews, and went to her events without her knowing. He was proud of her. She was strong, brave, and admired by everyone. She had built a life full of purpose and love, everything he had failed to do. One night, Ethan went to an award ceremony where Lily was being honored. He stayed in the back, watching as she accepted her award. She gave a speech, thanking her mom for always being there for her. She didn't mention him. As the crowd clapped and cheered, Ethan felt both proud and heartbroken. He knew he would never be a part of her life. Not really. She had moved on, and all he could do was watch from the sidelines, filled with regret. Ethan stood still, watching Lily with her friends and co-workers. She was laughing and chatting, surrounded by people who cared about her, a family she had built from the broken pieces of her past. Ethan knew deep inside that he didn't belong in her world. Sure, he could give money to help her projects or attend her events, but he would always feel like a stranger. It wasn't Lily's fault they were apart. It was because of the choices he had made, choices he couldn't undo. Later that night, Ethan sat alone in his big, quiet apartment. The silence was heavy, reminding him how lonely he had become. He had tried to be part of Lily's life again, but all he could do now was support her from afar, sending secret donations and watching her achievements from a distance. Suddenly his phone rang. The screen said, "Unknown number." Ethan usually didn't answer calls but this time he felt like he had to. "Hello, this is Ethan Carter," he said carefully. There was a pause before a familiar voice spoke. "Ethan, it's Claire." His heart started racing. Claire never called him. "Claire? What's wrong?" "It's Lily," she said. Her voice sounded worried. "She was in a car accident. She's in the hospital." Ethan felt his stomach tighten with fear. Will she be okay?" he asked, his voice shaking. "She's stable now," Claire said, "but she's unconscious. The doctors are keeping a close watch." "Which hospital?" Ethan asked without hesitating. Claire sighed. It sounded like she didn't want to tell him. "St. Luke's on West 114th. I'm already here." "I'm coming," he said, grabbing his coat and rushing out the door. The drive to the hospital felt like forever. Every streetlight reminded him of his mistakes and everything he had lost. He never thought he'd be racing to his daughter's side in the middle of the night, hoping he could somehow make things right. When he got to the hospital, he found Claire in the waiting room. She looked tired and worried, her hands nervously twisting her coat. When she saw him, she stood up. "I called you because I thought you should know," she said. "And because I didn't want to be alone." Ethan nodded. "Thank you for calling me. I just want to be here for her." They sat together in silence, waiting and hoping Lily would be okay. Hours passed. Ethan glanced at Claire now and then, noticing how tired she looked. She had raised Lily by herself, gone through so many hard times alone while he had done nothing to help. He felt ashamed. As the sun started to rise, a doctor came into the room. His face was serious but calm. "Miss Bennett, Mr. Sinclair," he said, "your daughter is awake. She's weak but conscious, and she's asking to see you both." Claire let out a long breath she didn't realize she was holding. She stood up and looked at Ethan. For a moment, they shared a silent look, both relieved and nervous. They walked into Lily's hospital room together. The room was small and clean, with machines beeping softly. Lily lay in the bed, her face pale and bruised, but her eyes were open. When she saw Ethan, her face showed surprise for a second, but then it changed to something colder. "Mom," Lily said softly, turning her attention to Claire. She reached out, and Claire took her hand, sitting beside her. Lily looked at Ethan after a moment. Her eyes were sharp, even though she looked so tired. "You came," she said, her voice quiet. I wanted to be here for you," Ethan said, his voice shaky. "When I heard, I couldn't just..." Lily cut him off with a small, bitter smile. "You couldn't just stay away?" she said. She sighed, looking down. "This doesn't mean I forgive you. My mom is here. My friends will come soon." Her words stung, but Ethan noticed there was a softness in her voice too. Maybe it was because she was tired or still on medicine, but he felt like it was something. Ethan looked at Claire, who gave him a look he couldn't quite understand. "Lily, I know this is hard," Ethan said, "but I want to be here for you, even if you don't need me. I want to help." Lily turned her head away, her jaw tight. "Help?" she said. "How? You weren't there when I needed a dad. You can't just show up now and expect that to mean something." Ethan felt his throat tighten. He wanted to say something that would make it all better, but he couldn't find the words. Claire gently touched Lily's shoulder. "Lily, you need to rest," she said softly. "Getting better is what's most important now." Lily's face softened as she looked at her mom. "I know, Mom. Thank you for always being there." Lily leaned back into her pillow, her eyes closing as she began to drift off to sleep. Before she did, she glanced at Ethan one more time. Her face was serious. "Why did you leave us?" she asked, her voice faint. "Why weren't you there when we needed you?" Ethan felt like his heart had stopped. He didn't know how to answer. Lily's eyes closed, and the room became quiet. Ethan stayed near the doorway as Claire sat by Lily's side. The love between mother and daughter was clear, and it felt like a wall stood between them and him. After a while, Ethan quietly left the room. The hospital halls were cold and quiet as he walked away, feeling more alone than ever. As he stepped outside into the morning light, Ethan knew he couldn't fix the past. The family he had lost, the daughter he had hurt, it was too late to make things right. He would carry that regret with him forever. Now think about the people in your life. Don't wait until it's too late to show them how much you care. Thank you for watching. If you like this story and want to see more, please subscribe to our channel. That way you won't miss any new videos. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and share what you think in the comments. We love hearing your thoughts. Also, don't forget to check out the other videos on our channel. We'll see you in the next story.